Imagine a world where the deepest truths are hidden in plain sight, messages concealed within ancient words that only a few dare to explore. Prophets of ages past spoke of days like ours, warning future generations of turbulent times when humanity would find itself torn between doubt and faith. These prophets left signs, messages, and warnings that have endured for centuries, reaching us now with a greater sense of urgency. Despite all the technology, advancements, and information we possess today, many of us feel something is missing, as if there's a fundamental truth still obscured, a key piece missing from our understanding. Welcome to Lion's Promise. Today, we're going to dive deep into what the ancient prophets had to say about the future of the world, revealing prophecies that seem as relevant as today's headlines. This is more than a study. It's a journey for those seeking answers, for those who feel there is more behind the news we read, the changes we see, and the crises we face. The prophecies we'll explore have impacted generations. Take Daniel, for example, a prophet known both for his wisdom and for his prophetic visions, who foresaw the rise and fall of empires with astonishing accuracy. Others, like Ezekiel, had complex visions that defy simple interpretation but evoke intense curiosity about our collective fate. These prophets were not just men of faith. They were messengers of something far greater, offering warnings so that, in the darkest of times, we might still find a glimmer of hope. Now, I ask you, what would you do if you had the chance to know what lies ahead? Would you choose to look into the future and prepare for what it holds, or prefer not to know, staying within the comfort of the unknown? Today, we will follow the paths laid out by the prophets, uncovering what the future holds and how these biblical messages are more relevant than ever in our daily lives. This video is for those who aren't satisfied with easy answers, who sense there's more beyond the headlines and superficial explanations. Our journey has only just begun. Throughout this video, we'll explore some of the most powerful biblical prophecies, delving into Daniel's visions, the mysteries of Revelation, and Jesus' warnings in Matthew 24. Each word, each symbol, seems to guide us along a path of revelations connecting the past to the present. These prophecies are not just stories. They are a map, a guide that, for those who dare to decipher it, can reveal much about what lies ahead. For centuries, biblical prophecies have served as a beacon for those who seek to understand humanity's fate. These ancient texts are not mere words inscribed on scrolls. They represent what many believe to be divine messages, guidance that transcends generations and resonates today. The true allure of prophecy lies in its ability to speak across ages, to address both the people of old and us, with all our modern fears, uncertainties, and hopes. Imagine yourself thousands of years ago, hearing the words of a prophet like Daniel, a young man taken captive to Babylon who, despite being a foreigner in a distant land, stood out for his wisdom and later, for his disturbing visions of the future. In an era of kings and empires, Daniel saw images that many still strive to interpret. Visions of beasts, of kingdoms rising and falling, of times that would ultimately come to an end. His story is but one among the many that make up the vast and complex universe of biblical prophecy, and the depth of his visions still challenges our understanding. Alongside Daniel, figures like Ezekiel and Isaiah left their marks, speaking of distant kingdoms, of nations in conflict, and of times of judgment and renewal. These messages did not arise by chance. They responded to the dilemmas faced by their contemporaries but also carried visions that seemed to transcend time, guiding not only those generations but also the future. These prophets lived in uncertain times, where empires rose and fell, and where each new era seemed to bring a promise of change, alongside a shadow of destruction. And today, in our own turbulent era, we are faced with a question. Could their visions be warnings for us? Are we, like those ancient peoples, at the threshold of choices that could alter the course of history? The prophets' words contain visions of grand events, of profound change, and of spiritual battles that transcend time and space. For many, these prophecies are warnings of things to come. For others, they are puzzles. In this chapter, let's examine some of the most impactful, beginning with the vision of the prophet Daniel. In Daniel's well-known vision, he sees a succession of empires symbolized by a colossal statue and, later, by beasts emerging from the sea. These images reveal empires that would rise and fall, from gold to silver, to bronze and iron, and finally to feet of iron mixed with clay, a symbol of divided, fragile kingdoms. This prophecy describes with precision the historical succession of empires, yet many theologians and scholars believe it points to something more. At the heart of this vision is a message that even the most powerful of human kingdoms is fleeting before divine power. Ultimately, Daniel sees a stone, not cut by human hands, that shatters the statue, symbolizing the coming of a kingdom that will never be destroyed. Could this vision foreshadow the end of the systems we know today? Now, let's move to the New Testament, to the book of Revelation, where we encounter one of its most iconic visions, the four horsemen. Representing conquest, war, famine, and death, these horsemen are described as bringers of tribulations that will impact the earth. The first horseman, mounted on a white horse, is often associated with conquest and ambition. The second, on a red horse, brings the sword and war. The third, on a black horse, holds scales, symbolizing famine and scarcity. And the last, the pale horse, represents death. These apocalyptic figures awaken a deep fear but also evoke reflection on the recurring cycle of crises we face. Could these horsemen represent forces still active in the modern world: unrestrained ambition, global conflict, inequality, and mortality? Considering our present-day crises, can we trace the influence of these horsemen in today's headlines? Finally, in Matthew 24, we find Jesus' words speaking directly about signs that would precede the end of the age. Jesus warns of natural catastrophes, wars, rumors of war, famine, earthquakes, and persecution. He describes a scenario in which love would grow cold and humanity would undergo a period of trial. This passage is unsettling, as many of the events described seem to align with the problems we face in our modern era. Natural disasters are more frequent, conflicts intensify, and there is a growing sense of alienation and lack of empathy. Matthew 24 is not just a warning but a call for spiritual preparedness, as if it reminds us that in times of great difficulty, faith will be our refuge. When Jesus speaks of these troubled times, he encourages his followers to stay vigilant and prepared, like someone waiting for a crucial moment to arrive. These prophecies from Daniel, Revelation, and Matthew 24 carry a sense of urgency and, at the same time, mystery. For many, these passages are not merely warnings but maps, suggesting that the challenges and crises we face today were foreshadowed. As we consider the words of the prophets, an inevitable question arises. Are we living in the final days of an ancient cycle? Or are we being invited to see beyond what our eyes can perceive, to seek a truth that lies within words that have crossed the ages? Today, we live in a world where information travels faster than ever, and paradoxically, where misinformation and manipulation seem as present as ever. The prophecies we've seen challenge us to look beyond appearances and question the forces behind the crises and events that shape our reality. Could the prophets' words directly point to events of our day? Or are we interpreting these signs through the lens of a society immersed in conflict and uncertainty? Looking at the current world stage, it's hard to ignore the resemblances to the biblical warnings. Conflicts and wars, economic crises, and a general feeling of alienation and discontent echo the visions of ancient prophets. In Daniel's prophecy of the empires, for example, many see a parallel with today's global system, increasingly interconnected yet fragile. The metaphor of feet of iron mixed with clay recalls the vulnerability of a global society that, while powerful, rests on unstable structures. Could what we are witnessing be the fulfillment of the prophecy about the decline of great kingdoms? The four horsemen of the apocalypse, meanwhile, appear to represent forces still at work throughout history. Unchecked ambition, famine, war, and death remain shadows cast over humanity. In an era where inequality has reached alarming levels and where new crises arise constantly, the vision of the four horsemen seems incredibly current. These horsemen symbolize something beyond the literal. They are forces challenging stability and testing humanity's spiritual resilience. What about the signs in Matthew 24? We live in times of natural disasters, growing divisions, and a decline in empathy and mutual respect. The Internet, which should bring us closer, often becomes a battleground where ideas clash and fragment. The love that Jesus describes as growing cold is evident in modern relationships, with loneliness and isolation affecting millions. This apparent cooling of relationships and the rise in intolerance can be seen as manifestations of the scenario Jesus described. In the midst of all this, a question arises. Are the crises we face merely a product of our time, or is there a spiritual dimension behind these realities? Could the events shaking our world today be a reminder of human fragility, a call to turn our attention to what truly matters? For many, this is the core message of prophecy. Rather than simply predicting disasters, these words urge us to reflect deeply on our connection to the divine and to one another. With each new crisis, with every news story that seems to destabilize our world, we're challenged to question what it truly means to be human in times of uncertainty. Like a wave that silently gathers strength before crashing, today's challenges appear to build momentum, reminding us that the words of the prophets still hold meaning. They invite us to see the world with new eyes, to look beyond the obvious, and to recognize that behind the facts, there may lie a hidden truth. This connection between ancient prophecies and modern events leads us to an inevitable reflection. Could we be living at the threshold of a revelation, a spiritual awakening, where the words of the prophets resonate within each of us? Perhaps, at their core, these prophecies aren't merely warnings of difficult times, but an invitation for each of us to seek a life filled with meaning and connection, even in a world that feels increasingly disconnected. Throughout this video, we've explored visions from ancient times that, for many, seem to reverberate with the present. The prophecies of Daniel, the images of the 4 horsemen, and the signs described in Matthew 24 reveal a panorama that is both unsettling and enlightening. The overarching question remains: how should we interpret these messages? Are they specific warnings for our era or reflections on the human condition and the recurring challenges we face? These questions may not have definitive answers, but perhaps that is the true purpose of prophecy: to make us reflect, to challenge us to look beyond the surface, and to lead us on a spiritual and personal journey. In a world that feels increasingly troubled, these ancient texts remind us that, despite the hardships, there is always a reason to hold on to faith. The prophets did not speak only of destruction. They also brought messages of hope, renewal, and a kingdom yet to come, where justice and peace will be restored. As we reach the end of this journey, a profound thought emerges. If these prophecies are indeed a map, then perhaps the purpose is not just to know what is to come, but to prepare ourselves for any outcome. Preparation, in this context, doesn't mean simply waiting passively. It's a call to action, to inner change, and to seek a higher purpose. The transformation these texts inspire in us may be the real secret, the hidden truth that transcends the prophecies themselves. So, I ask, are you ready to reflect on your role in this world and the future that awaits us? The prophet's words remind us that the unknown isn't just something to fear, but also an opportunity to grow spiritually. What you do with this knowledge is what truly matters. After all, as the prophets have shown us, the future may be uncertain, but our faith and our commitment to goodness are timeless. As we conclude this journey, we're left with the profound impact these prophecies can have on our lives. Are we truly ready for what may come? Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't what the future holds, but what we choose to do with the present, with each decision that shapes not only our destiny but that of everyone around us. The legacy of the prophet's words is this: an invitation to live with purpose, with courage to face uncertainties, and with wisdom to see beyond appearances. As often happens in ancient tales, one door closes so another can open. The real hidden truth lies not only in knowing what will happen, but in being prepared for whatever comes, with faith and discernment as our guides. Our journey ends here, but the reflection continues. What will you do with what you've learned today? Are you willing to dig deeper, to go beyond the obvious, and to prepare yourself for the unknown? Remember, the end may be just the beginning of a new understanding. If you want to continue uncovering the mysteries of faith and prophecy, subscribe to Lion's Promise, join this community of seekers, leave a comment, and share your thoughts on these prophecies. Together, we can delve even deeper into these mysteries and strengthen our journey.